Hey, welcome to Therapy by Gabby. I'm Gabby. I'm a licensed professional counselor practicing in the state of Wisconsin, and I talk about things for therapists, therapy goers, and the mental health experience in general. Today, we're going to talk about realistic expectations for therapy. Just like any other relationship or experience where we have unrealistic expectations, we're going to get disappointed, and ultimately, we're going to have that experience of us failing or the experience or the process failing, and in reality, it wasn't achievable to begin with. As a therapist and therapy goer, I know the experience both personally and professionally of how difficult it is to enter the therapeutic space. And it can be really disappointing when we don't get that outcome that we're searching for, because ultimately we want to feel better. And most of the time as humans, we want to feel better as soon as possible. And our mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, energetic health is so important. And so it is worth identifying realistic expectations for therapy so that we can engage in the process in a realistic and effective and beneficial way. All right, let's jump into it. Here are 5 realistic expectations for engaging in therapy. Number 1, most of the time when engaging in therapy, we are going to feel worse before we feel better. I know that sounds a bit counterintuitive, right? I don't feel good right now, and that's why I'm going to therapy, because I'm told that therapy is going to help me. So how does it make any sense that I'm going to feel worse from this thing that is supposed to make me feel better? So hear me out for a second. Take a moment to think about the stuff that's bringing you to therapy in the first place. Maybe it's stuff that you don't talk about with anyone else. Maybe it's secrets. Maybe it's stuff that you feel shame about and you've been carrying that shame for years. Maybe it's a traumatic event that you've been distracting yourself from instead of witnessing and acknowledging that, that was me and that happened to me. Maybe you're coming to therapy because you have ineffective coping skills that you thought were the main issue, and then throughout therapy you're realizing that's just scratching the surface, and that was my adaptation to what the core issue actually is. When we go to therapy and we do real, deep work, we are digging up all of that shit that we've been running away from, or that we've been denying and rejecting and saying, nope, not me, that's not mine. And now all of a sudden you're in the therapy space and your therapist is saying, wait, hold up, slow down. That was you. That is you. That did happen to you. And when I say that, how does that make you feel? And what do you notice in your body when I say that? As a clinician, the way that I facilitate my therapy sessions is a lot of slowing down and really sitting in every micro moment of the thing that we have been trying to run away from, distract ourselves from, deny, whatever the case might be. And I'm honest with my clients and I say, I know this feels really shitty, and it's probably going to continue to feel really shitty. And there is intention behind this. This is something that needs to be witnessed, acknowledged, processed, and integrated into your nervous system so that we can get to the other side being feeling better. Another experience that tends to come up in therapy where people feel like things are getting worse before they feel better is that we realize we've been operating under certain illusions, and now we are coming to the disillusionment that that is not true and that is not the reality that we exist in. So for example, some people might have a certain illusion about their relationship with their parents or their relationship with a certain experience in their life, and then through processing and exploring and developing understanding about core beliefs and patterns of coping, they realize that that is not what they believed it was at all. And it's this really jarring experience of whoa, my system is reorganizing and I need a minute to figure out what that means to me. Realistic expectation number 2 is that not every therapy session is going to be groundbreaking and you're going to come to this life-changing conclusion that's going to get you closer to the outcome that you want. I know that's probably a controversial thing for me as a therapist to put out there, because I think there's this idea that therapists need to provide these life-changing revelations to their clients, and I'm here to tell you that's not true. It's not going to happen. There will be times where the light bulb clicks and you're like, whoa, I needed that. I didn't have access to that before. But in reality, most of therapeutic processing is hiking up the mountain in order to get access to the view, if that makes sense. There have been moments in my personal therapy experiences where I'm I don't really feel like we're making any shifts, we're doing the brain spotting, the parts work, the experiential therapies that I believe in as a therapist, and I know have worked for me personally because I know what this work has done for me in the past, and nothing feels like it's moving. And then 6 months later, for whatever reason, I'm doing some random shit, and then it's whoa, that access just came to me. And I don't know what it was in that moment, but it was I had finally done all of the work up until that point in therapy, outside of therapy, my own personal processing and reflecting, that I finally was able to understand an insight that I didn't have access to. And I wouldn't have gotten there if it wasn't for all of those quote unquote boring therapy sessions where not much was moving. I think this expectation is especially hard for people who are intellectualizers, because they are people who are super intelligent, insightful, self-aware, analytical. They know how to connect the dots. But as humans, we need repetition. And if we're looking through the lens of parts work, there might be an intellectual part of you and adult parts of you that have access to all of this information. And there might be younger parts of you or other parts of you who have not caught up to that information. So when the repetitive information in therapy sessions feels frustrating, know that it's intentional. Realistic expectation number 3 is that your therapist does not have all the answers. There are so many times that clients come into my therapy space and they're like, hey, do you think this is why I do this? Or do you think this is the reason for this? And a lot of times what I tell my clients is I know everything and I know nothing. Obviously, I don't know everything, but what I'm trying to get across to them is I can give you an abundance of theories and assumptions and potential truths, but ultimately, I don't know. And a lot of times, there's going to be answers that we will never have access to. And ultimately, a lot of the processing that we do in the therapy space and the insights that we come to depend on how a theory or assumption lands emotionally for a client. How does that land in your body? Does it feel true? When I say that, does your body relax? When I say that, does your body tense up? This is where building that emotional intimacy with ourselves, building that emotional intelligence, understanding what physical sensations connect with emotional experiences, and understanding our body's cue is really, really helpful. The truth of the matter is that the therapy space and therapeutic information and content is just so nuanced. As a client, knowing that the therapeutic space is so nuanced and it's not black and white and there's going to be so much that we don't have answers to, I would still empower you to advocate for yourself and say in the therapy space like, hey, I'm noticing this and I'm wondering if this is something that might be worth looking into. I'm wondering if I might have this diagnosis or this experience. And even if your therapist isn't an expert on that topic, I believe that effective therapists will say, yeah, absolutely, let's get curious about that, because I believe that you know what your experience is and I don't live in your body. And so let's get curious about it. Let's have conversations. I'll give you my general knowledge about it. And if you want more, I will support you in finding resources or getting a second opinion or connecting you with a psychologist or someone to do a formal assessment, whatever the case might be. Realistic expectation number 4 is that you do need to do work outside of the therapy space. I know, but it's true. You have to put in the work outside of therapy hours. If you think about it, your therapist sees you, 1 hour every week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe once a month. You're with yourself 100% of the time. Now, obviously, doing work outside of the therapy space is going to look different person to person because it's going to depend on their own unique circumstances, their own unique experience of their mental health, their core beliefs about themselves, their patterns of coping, the way that they've been adapting to the world and surviving so far. Keep that in mind that the way one person does therapy work outside of session might look different than somebody else. But generally speaking, what it means is that you take what you discussed in your therapy sessions and you integrate it into your day-to-day life. So you don't just go into therapy, talk about it for an hour, and then shut it down at the end of the therapy session. So that might mean if we've been reflecting on core beliefs or patterns of relationships and patterns of coping, you might keep those reflections in mind as you're navigating your day-to-day life. You're not necessarily making changes, but you're just being mindful of the insights that you've had access to in the therapy space and noticing what's happening in your relationship. If you've talked about certain coping skills or effective interpersonal and communication skills, and it is at that point where, okay, I've been mindful of it, I've been noticing it and getting curious about it, now it's time to put it into action. And so I actually start implementing it into my relationships or my relationship with myself in order to start seeing shifts that could potentially come from engaging in more effective skills. For other people, doing work outside of therapy sessions might look like feeling their feelings very intensely. This sounds a little unhinged, but I promise it was intentional. I have prescribed to my clients, take 10 minutes to fall apart, scream, cry, punch your pillows, yell at the top of your lungs. As long as you're not harming anyone and you're in a safe space and no one else is around, and you can do this with a level of safety where the vulnerability is not a risk for you, it's just you in this contained space. Let it fucking fly. So again, doing therapy work outside of the therapy sessions is going to look different person to person depending on what their experience is and what their goals are. And ultimately, your progress towards reaching your goals, it's not going to happen if that work isn't happening outside of the therapy space. Therapy can get you closer, but it's going to be a much, much slower process if you're not doing the work outside of the 1 hour that you see your therapist. And realistic expectation number 5, which if you follow me on TikTok, you've probably already seen me make a video on this, but I'm going to say it again for the people who have not heard it, which is you need to let go of the attachment to the outcome and engage and exist in the process. When we spend too much time focusing on getting to the end goal, we lose sight of what is actually going to help us get there. I know this is a really, really tough one, but it is a very significant part of the therapeutic process. And a lot of times when clients come into therapy, the outcome that they are searching for is the absence of negative emotions, and they associate that with mental health, when in reality, mental health is not the absence of challenging emotions, it is knowing how to exist with them. So those are the 5 realistic expectations for your therapy experience for you to get the most out of therapy. I hope this was helpful, and as a final reminder, if we hold an experience to unrealistic expectations, then it will fail every single time. If you like my videos and you want to see more content, please like, comment, subscribe, turn on the notifications so that you can get notified whenever I post, and let me know what videos you'd like to see in the future. It really helps me out and is helping me grow my channel as I'm just getting started. Thanks for being here. I'll see you next time. Bye.